For me, it was a relationship breakdown, essentially, which is very common for young people kind of experiencing homelessness. I was in the family home when it was essentially made clear to me that I was no longer welcome there, not long before I turned 17, while I was still in high school. And that led to me rough sleeping.
I was made homeless because the flat that I was letting, which was a private let, the landlady had been forced to sell up because she was moving back from abroad where she was working and needed the extra income. I attempted to find a premises on my own using the letting agency only to be turned down because I was in receipt of benefits and that made it part of my income. It wasn't until the last month, about 2 weeks into the last month of being notified that I had to leave the building, that I went to the housing officers and said, look, I'm going to become homeless. No one wants to rent to me because I have benefits and they don't think that benefits is a guaranteed income.
No, for me personally, there wasn't any support that I received prior to becoming homeless. It was not until several months afterwards that I started receiving support. I would say there were opportunities there where support could have been made available if we had structures in place like the bill is currently proposing. If Ask and Act had been in place back when I was kind of going through my experiences, if the 6-month provision for people receiving support had been in place, I feel like that would have made a huge difference. But unfortunately that didn't exist back then.
They put me in touch with several charities and said one of them will get back in touch with you, but there was nothing they could do to help me until the day I became homeless. So on the day that was the last date on the documentation for my notice to quit, they sent a housing group to come and pick up all of my furniture and all of my stuff and put it into storage. Then I was sent down to the Niddrie housing office and I sat in the Niddrie housing office for a day until closing time when they told me they'd found me a place to stay temporarily. But I was lucky that I had a very good friend who offered me a box room that I could stay in until I found a place of my own.
I think the organisations within the third sector do a very good job of trying to build and maintain links with those in the public sector, so justice, health, these sort of organisations. I think a lot more work needs to be done though between public bodies to try and join up their own working to streamline people's experiences, so to speak, and try and make sure that they're receiving the correct support as soon as possible.
I believe that the proposed bill will definitely improve the situation for those of us who are given notice to quit from a valid or reputable letting agency. The problem arises from those who don't know when it's going to happen. They have an inkling that it might, but they don't know if that's going to be next week, next month, 6 months' time, a year's time. Those are the people that we need to try and help more. Because for me, I was notified, but for some people they can lose their home the next day for any number of reasons. And those are the people that we need to try and support more.
There's lots of different types of homelessness, so not only is it rough sleeping, but also people can be sofa surfing between friends and family on different nights and sleeping different places. They can be in temporary accommodation in a period of limbo and never really having that secure accommodation to be able to move on with it all. Maybe wait until the point of crisis before trying to reach for help, because that's the way our current system is designed. So it's not really the norm to go and try and address your housing needs until you feel that you're actually about to lose your accommodation, and then you'll go particularly to a local authority for help. But also I think it's the other services that you might be engaging with at an earlier stage don't necessarily ask about your housing situation. So they might be looking at your money management, they might be looking at your employment opportunities, they might be looking at your well-being, mental health, or how you're working as a family unit if there's problems in school with your children, sort of and looking at the wider family support. But it's not always asked about people's housing situation. And that only seems to be picked up whenever we're looking at more of a crisis response to housing and homelessness. So combination of making sure that more agencies ask about housing as part of their engagement in their own service, combined with people wanting to talk about their housing needs and seeing it of value to sort of raise a concern much earlier on is really needed to try and bring forward sort of stronger prevention work. So the bill will introduce, under sort of the current sort of proposals, will have two elements around stronger prevention duties that will sit within the housing options teams within the local authority. And then the other aspect is the introduction of a new concept which is called Ask and Act, which will require other public bodies to ask about people's housing needs and then take action within their remit to try and help resolve their housing needs and wider support needs. So I think both the measures around the local authority extending their prevention activity and Ask and Act duties will ensure that more is done to tackle housing needs much earlier on, and it will put housing on the radar in the way that it currently isn't. Legislation is a really important framework for changing the behaviour of public services, but also hopefully changing the behaviour of individuals in society. So if they're hopefully aware of their rights around being able to access support much earlier on, people are much more likely to try and seek support in those areas. I think the challenge with the new legislation is bringing it to life and making it work in practice. So legislation is important, but it's not the be-all and end-all. And what sits beneath this is a big sort of transformation around public services in this area, to shift from one which is designed around a crisis response and to move towards one that's designed much more around early action and prevention. We need to do a lot more after the legislation gets passed to think about what implementation would look like and what is success, and make sure, importantly, that there's adequate resources to fund any new legal duties that are placed on local authorities and on other public bodies, as well as the network of provision that will go around the legislation. So the third sector, such as advice, debt agencies, etc., homeless charities, will all need to be part of that new ecosystem, and we just need to make sure that it's all brought into the picture and is properly resourced.